Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Poz, with the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. A very special night tonight. Something that I've wanted to learn more about. John, I know on your flagship that you had another expert in the world of wrestling cards, so this could be stacked for those that want thematic listening. But for me, learning about pro wrestling cards is something new to me. Even though, growing up in the 80s, big trading card thing, it never really crossed over much into pro wrestling. I would say like more baseball cards, certainly a little bit football, but pro wrestling was like probably as much as hockey, and I didn't even watch hockey. So I just brought a few of the cards that I've gotten over the years just to throw them out there. So the first is an alleged murderer. Jimmy Superfly Snuka signed this at a baseball card show. At the same show, I really was hassling Ted DiBiase. He was kind enough to sign 3 cards for me. I realize this is something that might be of value. The Bret Hart, better lighting here for those watching, the Bret Hart rookie card. I just bought this in the last year. I've showed it on the show before. So this is when TNA was going on Monday nights. It was like a promo card for that. And this one is special to me because of my son who loves Pokemon. This is the Howlucha card. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Aaron, the wrestling card guy, to the show.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk wrestling cards with you guys.
All right, love it. But before we get into that, just quickly, where did you grow up and like when did you start like wrestling? I feel like us Northeast guys, usually it's probably like WWF and you know what I mean? I'm a New Jersey guy. Obviously Lavie's New York. I know you're New York, but more than likely, right? WWF guy?
Oh, absolutely. I can't exactly remember the moment I started watching, but it was sometime around 1990. I was born in 1984, so about 6 years old, 7 years old, and really got into that era of the new generation and all the characters they had that time, and you know, uh, right about that time. And went back and saw a lot of the VHS tapes of the earlier stuff when I was a kid, but yeah, right around 1990 there.
And when did you first get into like trading cards and discovering the card aspect of it?
Well, trading cards, I was very late to wrestling cards, to be honest, as far as it was about 2019 when I really started getting
Wow.
heavy into them. But as far as trading cards, it was all Batman mania of the 1989 film, and I grew up with the '66 show, and yeah, right when that came out, I believe my father found some packs of Topps '89 Batman and brought them home to me, and I opened them up, and I loved all the images on it. I remember the crazy Joker sticker with him sitting there with the Joker X brand products, and yeah, it was a great one. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cards, a lot of non-sport I grew up with, and I did have wrestling, but it wasn't as prominent as just kind of random non-sport.
So what was the first like wrestling trading card set you ended up getting, all these years later?
Well, the early ones I started collecting just randomly as a kid was 1990 Classic WWF, 91 WCW Impel. I even feel like I got a couple packs of 94 Action Packed, but yep, there's those Impels. There's
Yeah.
that border, man. That's iconic.
I
But
think
yeah,
they still exist forever. Like every
oh,
store has them, vending machines, everything like that.
sealed boxes. A good friend of mine, Tony, from WrestlingTradingCards.com. He always jokes around that he's still running them off, printing them in his basement. But yeah, there's still a lot of sealed product of Impel, which is wild. But
That's the weirdest thing. Like WCW was never really good at like marketing, especially at that point. And you know what I mean? And merchandise. But for some reason, everybody had that card. And there's like a millions of them. It's so strange.
Oh, absolutely. Realistically, the only thing that's pretty, more on the valuable side is it was one of the early sets to have a chase card. It had a hologram Sting card that it's still kind of unclear exactly whether it's pack pulled, if it's a case incentive that comes off the top of the box. But a lot of people claim to have pulled it from a pack, but there's still a little bit of mystery around that. But yeah, for the most part, the rest of the set is real on the common side, but classic nevertheless.
And I feel like those 90 WWF cards are, very easy to get, and a lot of people have them. They're so cool and so iconic as well.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff was really overprinted there from the '90s and up. Even their first set, WWF 1985 and the '87 one from Topps. Obviously they're iconic, and if you get them in high graded cards, they're worth money. But also, still, those sets were very heavily printed too. The whole junk wax era.
Yep. I love to get those 90 WWF cards signed. I think they look awesome signed just because the pictures are so perfect. Love doing
Absolutely.
that.
One thing I got into a little bit through a friend during the 2020 and the pandemic was through the mail autographs. It never occurred to me before to give it a try, and a friend was doing it. So I sent a few out to random people. And one of the interesting ones that I don't see signed a lot is I have the Sean Mooney card from that set signed. Sent the letter to him, and a month later it came back to my house. And, pretty cool to have that in the collection. I got Ted DiBiase and a few others signed, but iconic set, especially I really love they had the logos for each of the wrestlers and just those fonts and everything at the bottom, all their names, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jake the Snake with the logos. I mean, again, it's an overprinted set, but it's beautiful still, very fun to collect,
Awesome. I love that set. Do you have like a favorite set of yours, just as far as wrestling is concerned? Something that you just really caught your eye?
Yeah, well, getting into when I got more into the modern cards, the 2018 All In set, I feel like is very iconic. With the rise of AEW and everything like that, I feel like that's a big dividing line in wrestling today. And we all know nostalgia is a very powerful thing, and especially when these things come back around again after the 20-year mark, 25-year mark. A lot of people are going to be looking back to the beginning of AEW and a lot of those early indie talents, and All In is a fantastic set.
Now, Lavie, I know you're chomping at the bit. You want to talk some cards?
Oh yes. So I have a question.
Sure.
I have this trivia game, and recently I realized that there are cards in here that are actually pretty ugly, in my opinion. But they're actually not even like, it's not even like slick. But and I don't want to hold things up. I have like Triple H and The Rock and so on. And I think that's interesting in that these are actually considered trading cards now. So am I wealthy now?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say wealthy, let's say, but it depends on the year. If that's the first year, the 1997 ones, because there was a 97 and a 98, I believe. And even
this is the 98, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Still people collect them. The key thing usually with those is if they grade well. I mean, if you get a 10 of someone, like The Rock, even if it's 98, someone's going to want to have that in their collection, of course. But there was a period there where the 97 set, there was a big rush on the Rock card. People were getting that graded, and it was selling for good money. And, people were, he's one of those people where it's a little ambiguous to what you want to call, his first appearances, rookie card, whatever you want to call it. He's got that Bumblebee football card, which was a perforated set that came, promotional Bumblebee tuna set. And from when what was the Florida team, the Marlins that he was on, I believe.
The Miami. Well, Miami Hurricanes, right?
Hurricane. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
Yes. And then again, there's a 1997 Panini sticker from the UK or Europe rather, and so yeah, there's a little ambiguity on that one, but yeah, people were collecting those pretty strong for a little bit.
I think it's interesting that at least in terms of my perception as I was born in 1980, so not too far off, like the perception of what was collectible and what wasn't. Of course, what you don't consider collectible then becomes collectible. To me, perforated cards, and no insult to anyone in the market, were crap. Like, it came in WWF magazine, I would rip it out and stack it up, but then I'd throw it out. Like, these weren't cards, but now I'm just kicking myself, like, oh my gosh, I had that's some of the most valuable stuff, right? Like, if it's cut properly.
Well, sure, yeah. Again, it always comes back to a higher grade on things, but I feel like that's probably the reason why those things gained a little bit of value. We all just ripped them out of magazines, treated them like they were valueless. The cards that came out of the amazing WWF ice cream bars that we used to get off the ice cream truck. Again, a lot of those kids just took the box and threw it out without taking the card out sometimes. So, anything that kind of takes the population down a little bit, gives a better chance for the value to raise, of course.
Yeah, I was recently fascinated, and I'm sure it's not too far outside of your area, but those, when you go to the supermarket and you bother your mom to for a quarter and you put it in and it's a sticker comes out, which isn't usually the brand that you're expecting, but those Crockett era, NWA, there's apparently
100%.
Like a Luger, a Sting, Ric Flair,
Road Warriors.
sort of
That
stuff.
Road
Yeah.
Warriors sticker is beautiful, and the cool thing is it really has a look towards the chrome refractor, superfractor kind of, the hologram kind of circles on it when you move it in the light. That really are nice stickers, and again, same thing. At least half of them got peeled, stuck to a locker or something, a notebook. The other half got lost, thrown away, and you have a very small amount left. And when you send it off to PSA and you get a high grade on it, then it really makes a big difference.
So interestingly, I think a recent record setter was a rock. I'm not sure if it was a 1 of 1 or if it was just hard to be a 10. I was noticing during the pandemic, I followed comic books a little bit more, that it just seemed like people, there was hedge fund guys or whomever that were bored, and they were pumping up the prices to this huge degree, and that seemed to cross over into pro wrestling cards.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, you get everybody in the house bored. Everybody starts looking around for something to entertain themselves. But yeah, I mean, some people, you know, some people point towards the Panini sets that how they got really hyped at a proportion with the value. A lot of people say that maybe people were pumping them, but also there was a lot of general excitement about them. During that era, I was a little more leaning towards the AEW side. That was a little more exciting and interesting to me. But a lot of the those Panini cards are great. It's just if you bought them at the insane prices they were at, you really took a loss on them. But yeah, I mean, there are people who drive things up for sure. But Panini does have their fans for sure coming over the basketball and different things like that. But more of the cards that I'm more experienced with are the sets from independent promotions. There's a lot of promotions like GCW, even Limitless. You had Randy Carver on recently, and I mean the sets that they produced. Record-setting sales. I mean, their MJF Series 1 is the highest sale for any independent wrestling card. The last sale for a PSA 9 was $10,000, and it's pretty nice for something that used to go for $5 a pack.
So yeah, no, that's a wonderful transition. I was going to start asking about the independents. So it seemed like the leaders are the GCW, Limitless, and then the FCW with like the Roman Reigns era, are those sort of like the leaders in that area?
Yeah, well, personally, for me, GCW is one of my favorite independent sets. But when you go over to like FCW, I mean, they're wildly collectible still, but I've always been shocked that they've never reached the levels of sales that I feel like they should. I mean, take something like the Roman Reigns first appearance. I mean, I believe the height on that is about $5,500, and you look at MJF is still a huge talent, but you look at his independent card sale at around 10K, and then you look at Roman around 55. Seems a little, they should at least be up around the same, and FCW, I feel like there's room for that to grow over time. If you get some good cards out of that set, hold on to them, get them graded. I don't know why WWE fans, I feel like, don't gravitate towards independent cards as much as indie fans or AW fans, TNA fans. They look for more alternatives to find the stars they like. And for some reason, I think WWE fans aren't in the habit of digging and looking back to some of those indie releases.
No, that makes a lot of sense because, like, and again, my understanding of like the baseball card market is dated, so this could totally change. But like, I remember being surprised that like the minor league cards of like stars, like, yes, they did well, like in the let's say like mid '90s, something like that. But like compared to their major league rookie card, it was like a different thing. It was sort of like it was considered like a curiosity rather than like a first appearance, and maybe that's like the mainstream thing for WWE fans. They want to see that star in their element, in their character, whereas like AEW on down, people are more open, and you actually like they want to see more of the person.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of it goes back to your more standard definitions of rookie cards. It's a lot more stringent where it's got to be pack pulled, which most independent cards come in sets. You basically buy 32 cards, base cards. Sometimes you get a chase. Sometimes they have chase cards that are included, 1 of 2 or 1 of 4 cards, and those have lower print runs. And but there really are differences when it comes to that.
So I came across something interesting, maybe in the last year, maybe a little bit longer than that, where I don't remember the wrestler and I don't remember the promotion, but the wrestler was basically like outing the promotion, being like, if you're going to make a card, can you get a permission first? Is there like certain collectors in the market that look for like, I guess for lack of a better word, like ethically produced sets, meaning that like they look like it looks like the talent was involved in a photo shoot and that they got permission for that, or that doesn't really carry over?
I mean, I personally find it important. I love to hear that talent is giving their permission for their likeness and all that. I know in the earlier days, I feel like it was. I feel like a lot of that went by the wayside because that stuff hadn't been valuable yet. You know what I mean? I think it was just a little $15 tchotchke that people could buy at a show, go around, get signatures, and it was just kind of all in good fun. And then when people start spending 300 and 500, 700 on a card, then a talent looks and they're like, hey, why don't I even own one of these? This is supposed to be my first card, and I don't even have one. So over time, I feel like companies have gotten great at that. I know that GCW these days, well, they've kind of discontinued making base sets, but they were giving extra cards to the talents so they could sell at their booths, different things like that. They were getting permission later on. Atomic Legacy Wrestling out of Florida. I know their guy Pete Lynch, who got the set together. He got signatures from every one of the people on the set. and got their permission, made sure everything was completely good. So I'd like to look for things like that. But when it comes to collectability, of course, if you want every MJF card, you're going to get it, whether, whether he gave permission to it or not, that 2018 Limitless card. I mean, it's the holy grail of indie cards and MJF cards. So that really, that really means something still.
My entrepreneurial brain is moving right now. John, maybe we should have like guests of the business. So Aaron, one day you might have a grainy
Yes.
picture from our StreamYard and
Yes.
number 27 in the set. So we could have some fun with this.
That would be great, man. That would be fantastic. The business of the business card set, man. You guys should get that going, man. I would love to
Love
see
it.
it.
So with sets that have done really well, as you mentioned, like GCW hasn't done a base set in a while. It looks like Limitless does every once in a while. Is there sort of like everyone kind of has their eyes on these certain promotions where previous sets have been so collectible that they're going to like jump on it and try and buy as many as they can, like next time that opportunity presents?
I believe those things do happen. I believe that's why with some of the final GCW sets and even how Limitless releases a lot of their sets, they do them in small batches. Basically, they'll put up a quantity of 20 and let it sell out, and then a week later put up a quantity, and let it sell out, because I believe people were during, the pandemic, really throwing their money around and trying to buy up an entire quantity of a set and control that. So I do believe a lot of the promotions kind of got smart to that, but then it also makes it a little tougher for the people who want to collect them. You're going to check the website and you're like, they're sold out again. Checking all day, they're sold out, so it does make it a little difficult from time to time. Another distribution kind of issue that I and a lot of friends have a problem with is pre-orders. A lot of promotions do pre-orders these days and swear up and down that, oh yeah, it's about a month, 2 months, and sometimes you're waiting half a year. I don't want to name promotions, but it's a little disappointing. So I do miss the old days when, Brett used to just put up 100 sets on the old GCW merch site, and we could just go there and order two.
The pre-order, I think some people are still waiting for that wrestling promotion from 15 years ago, right? Like where Jericho was involved. Wrestling Revolution Project, right? They raised $100,000 and they only released on YouTube like one horribly produced like battle royal or something.
Oh, I'm not even aware of that one.
I think that's kind of a legend. So when you have a chance, check that out. So
sure.
What about somebody that's listening here and they're inspired? They're like, this is something that I want to collect. I'm late to the game. What should I do? Should I start going to shows with wrestlers and asking them if they have sets? Like, where do you go? Like, what's the community?
Well, I mean, as far as, of course, there's always, things like eBay, this and that. But from my experience, I enjoy the wrestling card community. I generally socialize a lot on Twitter, when it comes to trading cards. There's a great group of people on there, group of friends that we affectionately call each other the Brotherhood. We're always looking at each other with different releases, or when certain cards are available. We all know who we collect and help each other out. So having friends in the hobby is a really big asset. Find people who like to collect the things you like. Make friends with them, trade with them, buy from them, sell to them. That's the best way to do it, is really get involved in the social aspect of it, because that's what I think really drives it these days. In the past, I feel like in 1985, if you bought a box of WWF cards and you and two other people looked at them and, we're like, oh yeah, that's cool, and you put it on a shelf and that's that. Well, nowadays we all talk to each other every day, and when it's Rowdy Roddy Piper's birthday, people start posting cards of his, and you get to see other people's collections. You get to show off your own, and it's like a daily social thing, and it really keeps the hobby interesting and fun. I really recommend that. Find some friends in the hobby.
Anyone in this broader community that has some Barry Horowitz extras, you know how to find me. Uh,
Excellent.
I'll,
I'll have to see
let
what
me,
I have lying around.
oh, nice. Let me turn over to John.
Aaron, where could everybody find you social media wise?
Well, generally, on Twitter, X, my handle is at AEW card. Probably about the first year of being on Twitter, I more or less, gravitated towards that promotion. But when you start getting deeper and deeper into the hobby, you want to get involved in everything and all the promotions. So, I broadened it to the wrestling card guy. But yeah, you can find me at AEW card on X.
Anywhere else where we need to find your website or anything like that?
Basically, that's where you can find me most, where I'll respond. I played around with a few others, Instagram, Threads, this, that, and the other. But no, the community on Twitter really grabbed a hold of me, and a lot of great people on there when it comes to the card collecting community and wrestling.
All right. Aaron, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on today and helping to spread the word of wrestling cards to everyone.
Awesome. Have yourself a great night. Thanks, Aaron.
Take care, brothers.
All right, Lavie. Let's get to some of the news here. What is going on? Parking lot wrestling? What are we doing? Backyard wrestling here? What's going on?
Yeah, no, this is what's like a fascinating article, and I know usually like if we have time we hit some of these articles at the end, but like this article from Eastern Door by Olivier Cadeau really spoke to me. It was so fascinating. So just a snippet of it. The latest interspecies wrestling show in Kanawake was on Saturday near the Knights of Columbus building. In fact, it was outside in the parking lot. That was not the original plan, according to ISW promoter Michael Woods. We were informed on October 1 that we wouldn't be able to run our show inside at the Columbus as originally planned. General Manager of Public Safety Robin Montour said that the building was closed last week for precautionary reasons after unusual cracks were found. The building has partially reopened, and the Knights are still waiting the full results. With less than a week before the show, Woods did not want to cancel. I had wrestlers coming from Ottawa, Montreal, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Alabama, and from Lisbon, Portugal. We couldn't cancel the event. A lot of these guys do this for a living, and Saturdays are their biggest days. They agreed to do this show months ago, and on such short notice, they would not be able to fill the hole in their schedule or monetary loss left by cancellation on our end. When Wood spoke to Kyle Zachary, one of the wrestlers, Zachary told him that they could hold it outside instead, although it would need to be a few hours earlier due to visibility concerns. Let's see here. Sorry. Kyle was the hero for this. I'm just happy the show was still able to go, said Zachary. He said that wrestling outdoors is pretty common, especially for independent wrestling shows, and that Saturday ended up being an ideal day to do it. I love the sense of community that I felt running the event. We'd have people walking or driving by who'd stop by and hang out and check out the show for a bit. We were all having a great time. If the show was indoors, a lot of these people wouldn't know that it was happening. All sounds good so far, John, right?
So far, so good.
So let's get to the reality of it. Old Horn Barbecue was there to serve food, and the 40 or so people in attendance and the dozens more who dropped in and out had a great time. But they wish there had been more people. I think having to bump the show up affected our crowd size a bit, but at least it wasn't empty because it was outdoors. So you're like, okay, 40 people times, whatever the Canadian dollar's worth, times, whatever the ticket price was. Remember, somebody came from Lisbon, Portugal. I assume they flew them in. ISW could no longer charge for tickets. There are a lot of cases in independent wrestling where a promoter will bank on the attendance and money made through ticket sales being enough to cover their roster's fees. A lot of time, these promoters end up disappointed by a small draw and end up not being able to pay their wrestlers. That will never be me. My budget before ever selling a ticket includes the wrestlers' pay and transportation fees. The only person paid by ticket sales is myself. Wood said that before calculating streaming revenue from the internet wrestling TV show, he was down a few $1,000s. It would have been worse if not for the folks in attendance buying merchandise or leaving tips at the table. He gained a lot of notoriety for the talent, for having respected their ask and schedule and putting on the show. So, we often hear bad stories about promoters, independent interspecies wrestling, which is a fascinating name. And this guy seems like a good guy, but depending on somebody's budget, you could really lose your ass. Pardon the language on this, right? Like you're flying people in, you can't even charge for the show. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that a show like this went on. You don't like you hear crazy stories in wrestling, but just like from a financial perspective, you had to move the show earlier. 40 people who didn't pay. It's not a laughing matter, but just like a crazy story. But sometimes you're investing in sort of the future, right? Like these talents, if you want part of your promotion, it's kind of a unique promotional style. Like they call it like for people wrestling for people that don't watch wrestling. So like you don't want to lose that sort of idea, but it's a hard day there.
For sure. Now let's talk about something big. New Japan Pro Wrestling, Zack Sabre Jr. What's going on with New Japan Pro Wrestling?
John, I called it last week. With my limited knowledge of Puroresu, Zack Sabre Jr. is somebody that just stand out to me. So from the perspective of America or my own perspective, it seems like a really good move, like in terms of promoting shows in the US and to this market. He's a really standout wrestler, as we all know. Like that's not the point of this show, but that's fascinating, and it opens up like possibilities. You have to now with Moxley winning the AEW title. I don't know how many times that they faced off before, but it seems like a really fresh matchup, and that's something that you can do something with if there's still a fair amount of crossover, which of course there's going to be the show in the UK next time in terms of the Forbidden Door. So depending on who are the champions, then you have some stuff to deal with. Now looking at tickets on sale for the first time at the Walter Pyramid, this is prior to ZSJ winning the title. There was plenty of seats remaining after the first day or two. So not a run on ticket sales, but you wouldn't expect that, at this point. So something to watch, certainly with things freshening up in New Japan. And who just announced right there, president is retiring by 2026?
New Japan, Hiroshi Tanahashi will be retiring. The legend will be retiring.
So, we haven't seen much with, or at least from what I can tell, from John Cena's like retirement tour. I know he has a commitment of 32 to 36 shows. I don't know if any of those have come off yet, but you can of course do something unique with Nakamura every time he goes to a town. It could be for the last time, although they tour some of the same cities fairly frequently. So that's something that would have to be strategic.
Now there's a lot of news on GC Deb. What's going on? What's the latest with Game Changer?
So even when the news isn't so great, I think that really shows the strength of a frequent guest, Brett Lauderdale. I'm not just buttering him up because he's probably listening, but I think it really does show. So like I was looking at, John, I don't think you went to the show. I don't think a lot of people went to the show or were planning to go to these shows in Atlantic City. The Art of War, they're there pretty frequently. It's October, right? They have this beginning of the summer, end of the summer, New Year, end of the year shows and so on. So like this kind of gets stuck a little bit in the middle. And I'm looking at this show that's going to be in the basement ever since they left the carousel room. And I'm like, good shows are like 5, 6, 7 rows is great, and so on. I'm just like, there's still second row available, for both days. So I'm like, what's going to happen? So I'm not sure of the logistical reasons if this was planned or sort of like a happy coincidence in some sort of ways. But both days the shows were moved. At night it was moved outdoors, and then visually it seemed to be a very entertaining show, at least from the pictures I saw, people jumping off the U-Haul and so on. And then during the day inside, it was a much smaller space, but a more athletic, aesthetically pleasing look to one of their ballrooms at the Showboat. So things came across really well. Bully Ray showed up on the first night, which I don't think Brett and his crew would be surprised by the reaction that he got. I'm not sure if it was sort of like, I think it was probably more go away heat than like nuclear heat, but there's something that you can potentially do with that. But really, in terms of the sort of like the
Well, he came out to
storyline,
Nick Gage. He came out to Nick Gage's theme song too, so extra
wow.
extra
Oh,
heat added on there. Yeah.
okay, so maybe when Nick Gage is, hopefully in the position to do so, that might be like a blow off match somewhere. But I don't know if people really want to see Bully Ray. He has like a certain perception, but maybe we'll talk about him on, or he'll talk about himself, right? I'm Busted Open, and he always gets those like headlines like Bully Ray comments, whatever they say, comments on whoever. So it's worth a fair amount of press. Now, also more like within the GCW universe is the Alley Catch and Effie, the best friends, like, the breakup, and sort of like playing off real life a little bit, like in terms of Alley Catch not being booked as much for GCW for whatever reason recently, and sort of like using that, sort of feeling abandoned by Effie, who has remained booked by the promotion. So there's something to do with that. I guess like there's not so much of a distinction of men and women, but like it's interesting to see the woman as the heel, but like is the comeuppance like Effie like really beating her up? Like, like what does that mean visually? I think like it's not so much of like old paradigms. But it's something to think about in terms of blowing off this feud that's just started. So there's a lot to that. I'm curious, even though I won't be following show to show. Chad Minnis, who I just became aware of recently in terms of his promotional efforts in supporting GCW with their show at the mall. He just put out a message on LinkedIn that they're looking for major news outlets interested in doing lead up and on-site coverage of GCW events. Listing all of the different markets, including Houston, which I don't think they announced a return yet. So obviously that's forthcoming. But John, I was going to DM you. Maybe you want to get the two-man power trip on site, especially at the mall or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be good, pretty cool. But just looking at some of their upcoming shows here. So we talked about Atlantic City, which already happened. For the most part, it's looking weak. I mean, they did a nice job with, sort of like with in Atlantic City. I guess I'm cursing more than usual this show. Maybe it's the late hours. I'm not going to do the chicken, whatever, to chicken salad, but you get the idea there. But there's a lot they're going to have to work with here. Colorado, there are still more than 10 tickets available in the front row, as we're 4 days out from that show. LA, the fourth row is available. They'll probably get to another sellout there. October 31st, Halloween night, hard to tell. They'll probably do well there. VIP is sold out. General admission is available all the way out to Hawaii, and there's more than 10 tickets left in the second row, and it's not so far away. November 2nd. November 14th, it's hard to tell. In their the small hall, I think they'll probably end up doing well there. November 15th, we've talked about how they've been able to build up Pop's nightclub, so we're about a month out there. So, but still more than 10 tickets remaining in the front row. The NGI, first couple of rows are gone. Those death matches tend to be well branded, so that will probably do well. American Dream is a big highlight. They're down to second tier and third tier GA, so I think that's already doing really well. November 29th, it's early, more than 10 tickets remaining in the front row. In Brooklyn, they'll get there, I think, with that. December 1st in Talia Hall, still has 6 or more seats remaining in the front row and beyond.
What about TNA? What's going on with TNA wrestling right now?
So one of the things that they've been doing a couple of times is to sort of get sponsorship for certain matches, which is a really good idea. Thus far, I think it's included like sort of horror movies. I'm not sure if there's a crossover between their distribution arm in terms of their movie company or movie distribution service that they own. I'm not sure if that's connected or if this is just independent, but Monsters Ball Match at Bound for Glory, sponsored by the theatrical release The Eye of the Salamander. A sci-fi thriller, Eye of Salamander, will be released in select theaters November 1st. The cross-promotional sponsorship also includes social media elements, on-air broadcast mentions, and on-site activations. I'm thrilled to be partnering with TNA Wrestling and Bound for Glory in such a unique and exciting way, the director of the show said. TNA Wrestling fan base is some of the best in the world, and to be sponsoring Monster Ball, which no doubt will be a brutal and engaging match, is such an honor. So a smart thing to do, especially if it's not connected, in terms of bringing in outside revenue. Again, as we talked about, Bound for Glory, October 26th is looking really good. It could be another 2,000 plus tickets sold. Hard to tell exactly based on the way the map is showing. Plenty of tickets, though, remaining, as not surprising, during the tapings on the following day. November 8th in Fayetteville has plenty of tickets remaining. Center Stage has moved the majority of their small number of reserved tickets because it tends to be GA. But just to note, sometimes people like to look at either the worst of things or the best of things. But the best of things is that pay-per-views, like we've talked about, or premium live events, however they're branding it, tend to do well now the last several months, whereas the second day tapings or standalone shows, it's more of a struggle.
Anything else with TNA? Because it seems like they've got a lot of stuff coming up. Or was that it on TNA?
Yeah, that's it on TNA.
So as far as MLW is concerned, I know they've got some shows coming up. Where are they having their shows, and how are their ticket sales?
So November 9th, Lucha Apocalypto in the Chicago area. That looks like it's picked up really nicely. In terms of reserve seats, they might end up moving all of those tickets. December 6th or December 5th in New York, in Queens in their usual location. There are still front row tickets remaining, but I think based on the, it's a little far out, and based on the past and the way things move, that they'll end up doing fine there. January 11th in Florida, there's still plenty of front row tickets available. Obviously, I'm not sure of the geography of this compared to areas affected by the hurricane, so obviously not something people are concentrating on at the moment, but tickets have been out for a while, so we'll just have to come back to that at a later date. And then in February, they'll be back in Center Stage. Center Stage seems to be one of those usual stops now that all of the challenger brands are in the rhythm of going now, which makes sense. It's it's a well-known name. It's not too large. It's good for television or for streaming. So we have MLW, we have TNA, we have GCW there. I was going to say and so on, but I think that's it.
What about NWA? What's going on with the NWA and Samhain?
The pronunciation, again, I've probably been doing it for a few weeks, but of course, in terms of No Laughing Matter, of course, another show affected by the hurricane. So now that NWA has established itself at WEDU Studios in Tampa, that's what they're going to do. In the wake of devastation wrought by Milton, the NWA briefly considered moving our October 26th event out of state, as Robarts Arena in Sarasota has been temporarily closed due to staging of the recovery efforts. But upon careful consideration, I feel the best way we can support local recovery efforts and our great fans is to keep our business in Florida. As such, the show will now be taking place at our Tampa taping home at WEDU Studio, said Billy Corgan. So if you notice, John, I avoided saying the name of the show since you covered it so well.
Now, what about Sakyapan? What's the latest? What's going on with them?
So as we've talked about, John, they it seems like they've done well in terms of ticket sales every show that they had. One of the things that we did note was that they were promoting that there were tickets available the day of the show. I did a search of their ticket listings, and you could buy up to 10 tickets. I'm not sure how many hours, especially with the time zone difference, it was out, but the pictures looked full, and they sent a press release, and I'm sure that landed with you too, John. 1,500 fans sold out your call in London, and that's what it is right now. So a promotion to keep an eye on.
What about Triller? I feel like maybe the merger is about to be approved here.
Yeah, so it looks like, and certainly by the time most people will hear this, that things should be in order. So the merger was approved October 11th. The merger is expected to close on October 15th, the day after we're recording this, or by the next morning. And first trading, so it'll be the symbol will be ILLR, ILLR, on October 16th. So as a shareholder, hoping for good news, but it's still something to keep an eye on, keep it interesting.
And finally, AE Dub. I know we don't talk about them too much, but let's talk about their ticket demise.
Yeah, so Cedar Rapids is sort of just an illustrative example, and maybe a little bit of an extreme example, but about 800 tickets sold a couple of weeks out from the show in a venue that holds 9,000 people. So yes, we know that they're expected to be profitable, and they signed a TV deal and a renewed deal, and that's what matters, and so on. But like, things are looking bleak. The days of selling less than 1,000 tickets are basically here. The arenas are dark. It's kind of if somebody goes to a show, it doesn't seem like a cool product. So it's something to start thinking about. I don't know if studio wrestling is the answer. One of the ways to think about it is maybe a little bit of an offshoot of a proposal I had from last week. Think about these field houses in college towns, and I wouldn't like go everywhere with it. Maybe find a rhythm of 6 to 8, and think about distributing tickets and incentives like free hot dogs and drinks and so on, and get excited college kids in, fill up the place with the 3,000 to 5,000 people, depending on which college and what the sizes of the arena and so on are, and have people excited, make it look like a cool product. Of course, they have access anytime to the Jacksonville outdoor venue that they ran during the pandemic, and you could do that to a certain extent as well. You just don't want to do it unless you really need to every week, so that you can bring people in more easily. I think if you're selling less than 1,000 tickets, the days of suggesting running venues that are 4,000 seat venues, because John, right, like where they're running in Philadelphia, it's not such a big place. One of the first places, I think the second place that they ran, second or third place that they ran, Dynamite. But like, if you're going to struggle to fill that, like, where are you now, right? Like, they have to get some of the momentum back. And as somebody suggested on X, and something I was thinking about as well, think about local promoters. You have Sammy Callahan that's done well in Iowa. You don't have all of these. You have Seattle, Defy Wrestling. You have these promoters that do well with their own promotion. Obviously, there's incentive for them to work, for the most part, to work with AEW. So that could be something, or even work with promoters that aren't necessarily wrestling promoters, but find people that can promote you on the ground, because having a team that I assume is a small team doing so, like sort of trying to drop in and get some local press, and they do, like, it's just not working. And it just shows again how smart Raphael was to leave when he did. And I think he did a great job. And my guess would be that his guidance was probably not to book these NBA arenas once it started seeing that it was struggling, but maybe that's where it was pointed, and he's smart. I assume that he would have worked for the Barclays anyway, but like, it just shows like, okay, where were things then? And they were already on a downward trend, and where are they now? And we've seen this to a smaller degree, but historically, right? Like AWA, after Hogan left, and then certainly struggling through the next 7 years. Although I love the television that was on ESPN, I think it holds up well. WCW, obviously after Finger Poke of Doom. TNA, I'm not sure what the point was. Maybe it was 2008, 2009 might have been their best touring years, and then not blaming Hogan, but when during that period where they tried Monday Night, and then it was sort of like downhill from there. Ring of Honor, when they started losing momentum, and like one of the things that was clear, like they booked a big venue in Houston, and like they couldn't fill it, and then there were struggles from there. I don't know, like month to month, year to year, yes, you could see like different promotions recovering to certain degrees, but those that were like at a certain high that dipped down, that came back, have promotions done it like in terms of several thousand tickets beyond WWE, like historically over the last 40 years? I'm not sure.
By the way, congrats to Raphael, the Barclays Center Arena of the Year, by the way. So moving on up, you know what I mean? He's doing pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, somebody that really knows the business and probably can read things. And again, not saying it had anything to do with it, but can kind of read things. But like you can really see, from that time period. So I think AEW just has to think about, like, to a smaller degree, like Brett Lauderdale can literally read the room and read the ticket sales and be like, okay, this is not going to look great on television. What can I do here? When you're playing at a different level, it's hard to like be like, okay, let's use a different part of, obviously they're not running there, but like, let's not use Madison Square Garden. Let's use the theater and so on. You don't always have that flexibility, obviously, but like, it's time to make a plan, make the show more visually appealing, and move from there. Why throw good money after bad and booking these big venues? Maybe you want to keep the relationship, but like you're not in the position where you can do that now, outside of the premium live events and very like special one-off like evenings and occasions.
Very, very true. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Lavie, where can everybody find you?
Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, LAVIE-MARG. Check out my long form articles on linecupjobsearch.com, and check out our group on LinkedIn, The Business of the Business.
All right. Thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.